Hello, everyone. Allow me to begin, if you will, with some announcements. Um, these past several days, I have done very little in the way of instructional math videos. And the reason for that is it is now the end of August, as you all know, and City Tutoring does not yet start classes until after Labor Day. And as is our custom, in September, two things tend to happen. Number one, students either start new courses, and this semester we're starting with a new crop of young people, or number two, previous students have the opportunity to come back and retake the final exam, a different version, of course, if they failed it back in June. So continuing students do not actually really start really anything new until late September or early October. So really the courses start for continuing students early October. In addition to all that, I personally have been busy with my tailor this week. I needed a new pair of pants, trousers for British people. Don't get too excited. I mean trousers, not what you call pants. I know you love that. I have searched, and I have been searching with no small devotion I was looking for trousers of pure wool. It's so hard to find these days. Everything is polyester or mixed fabric. I only want pure wool. I pay a pony for it. I pay a price for it, but I'm able to get it, and I was able to find it. Thank God. Made in North America, by the way, not in some unpronounceable place. And so I was blessed by God to have found finally some trousers, some pants that are really 100% wool. And I have entrusted them. I had entrusted them to a tailor, and finally got them yesterday. And I have been on. I have prayed on the holy days, following the liturgical calendar, seeking the grace that undergirds all things, and reminded myself that I often have to remind myself holy devotion is a labor in and of itself, often far more demanding than any coin earned employment. I've really been feeling the blessings of God recently, and I'm always blessed, but I'm saying recently it's been a more intense experience. I've been able to cast away vices that I thought were. That I really felt hopeless about, and I've really been able to cast off so many vices just by the power of prayer. But prayer sincerely, just basically surrendering myself to God, and I've been able to really change certain bad habits I had. So, but anyway, I don't want to get too confessional because that's for another time. Um, but for the rest of my time, it has been spent in what you might call thoughtful idleness, and it is precisely in light of that idleness that I wish to speak to you today about a famous mathematician, a Frenchman, who really very much like me understood the benefits of doing nothing but just lying in bed. And I'll start with that then. So, and I wrote about him. If you read my community posts on this channel, you'll know who I'm talking about because I mentioned his philosophy a few posts back. And so, my advice set what was the equivalent back then of the school principal to a frail young René Descartes. If you're French, please, I do apologize. I haven't taken French. I used to, it's embarrassing. I used to actually be quite fluent in French, but if I don't practice it, it's been awful. So I do apologize for my really bad pronunciation. But the principal said, my advice is to lie in bed as late as you like each morning. And Descartes acted on this advice. Not only while he was a sickly boy in school, but all the rest of his life. And as a young man, he was what we would consider today a drifter. And after several years in Paris, he traveled to Holland, where he served for a time he was a volunteer soldier. And while he was in Holland, something happened. And one day, he saw a poster in Flemish, a language he could not read. And so he was curious, and he asked a passerby to translate it for him. And his reply was, "The poster bears a challenge. It asks whether anyone can solve a certain problem in mathematics." And the man, who happened to be a college president, continued, and he said to René Descartes, "I'll read you the problem on one condition. You must promise me that you will try to solve it." And Descartes was intrigued. He promised to try, and he found a solution. It was work and took time, but he enjoyed it. So, consider this, my dear listeners. He accomplished some of the greatest leaps in mathematics, including laying the foundations of analytic geometry, the coordinate plane, all while indulging in what the world might mislabel as idleness. And yet it was not idleness. It was intentional. It was the intentional cultivation of the mind, the soul, and the imagination. And here lies the lesson that I wish to share in this short video today. How often do we hear the modern cry, "But we must toil, we must earn, we must survive"? And yet, Descartes whispers to us across the centuries, not all service is to commerce, nor all labor to necessity. Some work, the most noble work, is to the intellect, to the soul, to the life of thought itself. I have said this many times on this channel, and if you have not seen my famous video, went viral. I am linking it in the description. It is called "You Don't Need a Job, You Need a Life Worth Living." And each act, each moment, is a meditation, a form of refinement. It's a subtle rebellion against the modern tyranny of business. So when Descartes discovered the pleasure in study, he left the army and for the rest of his life devoted himself to learning. He became a great scientist, a philosopher, and a great mathematician. He still stayed in bed in the morning, and there he was, undisturbed, and he could use this time to think. He once, by the way, there's an anecdote, there's a story, he once watched a fly crawl across the ceiling and figured out how to describe its path by an equation. And we must admit the irony. A man in slippers, lost in thought, laying the foundations of geometry, analytic geometry, while society hounds you, giving you anxiety by making you think about the perfect housing, the deadlines, and annoying mobile notifications. Some would have said, if we are to judge by the sort of people who rule today, that Descartes wasted his life. I say he taught us the art of intentional living, and that lesson remains urgent today. And perhaps his greatest contribution to mathematics, as I said earlier, was his work in geometry. There used to be courses, by the way, called, some of you might be old enough to remember this, I'm old enough to remember, there used to be a course called analytic geometry in school, if you went to a decent school. And he thought of ways to apply algebra, and in this way, those foundations were laid. That is why the coordinate plane is often called the Cartesian plane. How many of your teachers, if you're a high school or college student, how many of your professors or teachers refer to it as the Cartesian plane? That's what we used to learn it as. And of course, his philosophy has its shadows, though, I have to say. He said the famous phrase, "I think, therefore I am." It might be an interesting insight, but the turn inward, the enthronement of the self above all else, has cast a long shadow across Western thought. Civilization, one might argue, became a man with a mirror for a face, brilliant, restless, and often disoriented, forever admiring, forever unsure. And yet even here, He guides us. He wrestled with the eternal from the quiet of his bed, not the frenzy of some marketplace. But I do think his philosophy on that end has been detrimental. In fact, a lot of people don't like, you see it nowadays when you are very sure of your beliefs, people find it negative. Most young people today always, have you ever heard, those of you a certain age, when I hear young people talk today, they have something called uptalk. They sound in their sentences as if though they're asking a question. At the risk of sounding a little bit ridiculous, I'm going to try and imitate some of the things I hear. So I was in a house yesterday, and I wasn't sure. Why do you talk like that? So what are we to do? Let us cherish our quiet hours. Let us remember that life need not be a treadmill of work to satisfy strangers or systems. Let us find joy in thinking and observing and simply being intentional and holy. Be ye pure mathematicians. And if in the process you notice what notices a fly crawling across the ceiling, let that too inspire wonder and perhaps a little mathematics. This past winter, I had occasion to experience a fly in my room, in my bedroom. Yes, even in the winter, for these great old homes have cluster flies, something called cluster flies. I remember seeing them fly to the window always, and I couldn't help but think of lemmings for some reason. Lemmings. How many of you have heard the word lemmings? Lemings. We have so many lemmings in America. That's probably why I thought about it. And Western society, not just America, Western society generally today, that so willingly drown themselves or fly towards their death. For once that fly has landed on the window, zap, I kill you. And Descartes reminds us, greatness need not bow to the tyranny of constant activity. Service to the intellect is service to eternity. And reflection is a form of rebellion. And purposeful cultivation, whether in prayer, attire, study, or simple observation, is an act of dignity, courage, and devotion. So here is the lesson you should learn today. It is not where a person is that counts so much as what he does. And you know where I got that quote from, by the way? From Dolciani's Algebra 1 textbook that we're about to use at City Tutoring. She actually has a story, Dolciani, in a modern algebra book, and she talks about Descartes. And she mentions that, the authors mentioned that in the article. You don't have those stories in math books today. So I hope this video was helpful. Yes, I will be posting soon enough math instructional videos. I know some of you have been asking me about that. Yes, it's still in the plans. It's just that at the end of August, it doesn't make any sense to do that when most students are still either on vacation, on holiday, as some of you say, or in the process of returning. That's why I haven't been posting. But I will be posting something soon on the fundamental theorem of algebra. Thank you all. And if you like this channel, if you like what we're about truth. We're about the defense of our faith and Western values. And we make no apologies for our traditional values. And if that is something that you're on board with, I encourage you to subscribe. Thank you.